Let me tell you something. By 9 a.m. that morning, my quiet Texas street looked less like a sleepy cul-de-sac and more like a military outpost straight out of the evening news. I mean, if you'd pulled up to Sunspane Drive, you'd have seen olive drab Humvees humming at both ends, soldiers in starched uniforms hammering bright orange federal notices onto lampposts that usually just advertised lost cats or piano lessons. Neighbors were standing out on their driveways, clutching mugs like life preservers, eyes darting, whispering in full-on synchronized panic. And at the absolute center of the circus, red in the face, screaming like she'd just been told her cruise got canceled, stood Patricia Manderly, president of the Coyote Vista Estates Homeowners Association, shrieking at a lieutenant like she was calling about a late Amazon package. You can't just evict an entire street. This is a private community. We have bylaws, she hollered, and the lieutenant, calm as a monk, barely looked up from his clipboard. Ma'am, this street was never yours to sell in the first place, he said. And neither was the ranch you liquidated while Staff Sergeant Parker was overseas. That would be me, by the way, stepping out of a dusty truck, duffel still slung over my shoulder, boots worn raw. 48 hours ago, I was halfway across the world, trying to ignore sandstorms and thinking about my own patch of land, Parker Ranch, 5 acres and a metal-roofed house just outside the HOA line. Now I was home, just in time to watch the same HOA that had stolen my land get steamrolled by the United States Army. I set my bag down, never taking my eyes off Patricia. "Hey, Patricia," I called out. "Miss me?" Now let me back up a sec, just so you get the picture. Sunspane Drive, before the Humvees and federal paperwork, was just another beige slice of suburbia on the edge of Mesquite Bend, Texas. I didn't really belong there, and truth be told, I didn't want to. My place was just outside the subdivision, a good half-mile past the fancy sign, on that 5-acre spread folks still called Parker Ranch. Bought it with my re-enlistment bonus, a single-story house, a sturdy barn, a few horses, some cattle, and a big Texas flag waving out front. Not a junkyard, not a palace, just a place where I could shake the sand out of my boots after deployment and remember what real grass feels like. But then came Coyote Vista Estates. The developers cut the old pasture across the road into 60 cookie-cutter houses, and just like that, the HOA moved in. And with the HOA, of course, came Patricia Manderly. Now, Patricia wasn't your garden variety, Karen. She was the final boss of Karen's, a retired compliance officer who carried a whistle on a lanyard and treated the HOA bylaws like the 10 Commandments. She measured lawns with a ruler, kept a binder labeled infractions, and drove a golf cart with a flashing yellow light, always ready to write someone up for having the wrong shade of mulch. At first, I found her funny. She'd march up to my fence, pants ironed so sharp you could cut yourself on 'em, glaring at my property like she was scanning for enemy troops. "That trailer is visible from the common area," she'd say, pointing at my horse trailer like it was a biohazard. "Not part of your HOA," I'd reply, tipping my cap. "Agricultural land, county rules." That phrase made her eyelid twitch. She hated it. I'll admit, the folks in Coyote Vista had some legitimate complaints. They didn't like that my cows stared at their yoga classes, didn't appreciate the floodlight I used for calving season, and they sure didn't like my F-250 parked where their beige perfection could see it. But legally, none of that was their business. What no one really noticed, except maybe the dusty records clerk at the county office, was this. The developer had drawn the HOA boundary right up against my fence, but never finished the paperwork to annex my land. Patricia saw something simpler, a young guy, always away on deployment, big empty land, and a signature line that wasn't always there to defend itself. When my orders came up for another deployment, I handed the keys and power of attorney to my cousin Dean, set up the bills on autopay, and left my land in the hands of the people I trusted. Patricia saw her opening. Not 2 weeks after I shipped out, the letters started, HOA courtesy notices in my rusty mailbox, even though my address wasn't in any of their documents. Dean snapped pictures, texted them to me overseas. "Tell them to pound sand, politely," I wrote back. "Not an HOA, check the map." Dean even went down to the HOA office, tried reasoning with Patricia. She just smiled her tight-lipped smile. "There's an annexation clause, always meant to be part of our community." Dean held up the county record. "Meant to isn't the same as done." But Patricia didn't let go. The next letter was a fine, then a second notice, then a notice of lien, $14, $3.75 for everything from non-compliant fencing to an unapproved flag and parking recreational vehicles on the lawn, meaning my horse. Dean took that one to the county clerk, who stamped it, "Not an HOA," in big red ink, and told him not to worry. But Patricia did what Karens do. She escalated. Started driving her golf cart up my driveway, snapping photos, caught once unlatching my barn gate to inspect for compliance. My ranch hand filmed her. "You're trespassing," he told her. "I'm performing an HOA inspection," she snapped. "For a property not in your HOA?" He just shook his head. Patricia started calling the tax office, animal control, even code enforcement, claiming my ranch was abandoned, my cattle neglected. Each visit ended with officials rolling their eyes and telling her to mind her business. Now, you'd think that'd be the end of it, just another petty tyrant bouncing off the brick wall of county law. But Patricia wasn't like most. She had the board, and she had the HOA bank account. She called an emergency meeting, laid out her plan, said my ranch was an eyesore, a liability, technically intended to be part of their community. She presented a manila folder, a forged annexation form with my signature, notarized, 2 months after I'd already deployed. They voted 3-1 to annex, lien, and sell my ranch. Patricia filed the fake paperwork with the county, hired some bottom-feeder realtor, and listed my home as an HOA-controlled estate sale, motivated seller, overseas relocation. A couple from Austin snapped it up, over the moon to snag a ranch at a suspiciously good price. The sale closed. The money went straight into the HOA account, and Patricia stood up at the next block party, wine glass in hand, bragging about removing a blighted property from our perimeter. Only problem? The soldier, me, was still paying his mortgage. The bank still thought I owned the land. And the army? The army pays real close attention when their people get railroaded back home. One Tuesday, in some air-conditioned office at Fort Mesquite, a sergeant in finance frowned over my file. "Hey, Captain, you got a sec? This soldier's BH is tied to a house that got sold 2 months ago, but the VA loan's still active. County says someone else holds title. That normal?" Captain Rivera, legal liaison, perked up. "Show me." He pulled my records, saw the sale, saw the annexation, saw a signature dated after my deployment. "Wasn't this guy on rotation in Al Rashid?" Rivera muttered. "He's downrange." Rivera flagged it, sent everything up the chain. Possible SCRA violation, fraud, civil rights. Recommend full review. Now, things move slow until suddenly they don't. Army JAG opened a file, CID flagged the documents as forged, and the U.S. Attorney's Office noticed a pattern: mail fraud, wire fraud, violations of federal protections for deployed service members. The county DA jumped in, never one to pass up an HOA takedown. Me. I was halfway across the world, running patrols, missing the smell of Texas grass, not knowing any of this until my CO walked in. "Parker, you got a call from housing." My gut dropped. "Sir, if this is about my dog on FaceTime again, not this time. Something about your property." 30 minutes later, I was listening to a JAG officer explain over patchy video call my HOA that wasn't an HOA had claimed to annex my ranch, slapped a lien on it, sold it out from under me, and multiple federal agencies were now very interested in Coyote Vista Estates. "Ma'am," I said finally, "are you telling me my ranch got stolen by a neighborhood committee?" "That's the working theory." "Good news is this is going to go very badly for them," she said. While the case built up, another detail surfaced. The Army had always wanted a buffer zone right where Coyote Vista sat, and Patricia herself had been leading the charge against base expansion for years, whining about noise pollution and property values. Now, suddenly the Army had a federally protected soldier with a perfect paper trail of HOA fraud, and the land the base wanted just so happened to be right there. The first sign the wind had shifted, Patricia found a letter from the U.S. District Court in her mailbox. She opened it in her spotless kitchen, humming "Stop Dead" as she read. Defendant in United States v. Coyote Vista Estates Homeowners Association, et al., for violations of the Service Members Civil Relief Act, mail fraud, wire fraud, conspiracy. Her phone rang. "Did you get something from the government?" Frank, the treasurer, whispered. "Probably a mistake. Patricia snapped. We'll get the attorney to handle it. But their attorney wanted nothing to do with federal fraud charges. Patricia, you never told me you annexed a soldier's property with a forged consent while he was deployed. It was an administrative correction. It's a felony involving a service member. My advice: cooperate, resign, and get a criminal defense lawyer. I pay your retainer. Not anymore, you don't, he said and hung up. The subpoenas followed. Records, emails, meeting minutes, bank statements. CID agents interviewed board members. The DA started knocking on doors. Meanwhile, the Army's real estate division came down to the county commissioner with their own plans for acquisition of his corridor, which included Sun's Pain and all the adjacent parcels. At the next HOA meeting, packed to the walls, 2 men in suits stood up. We're from the U.S. Attorney's Office in JAG. We're here to inform you about your rights as potential victims of HOA misconduct. The room buzzed. Victims, someone whispered. Yes, the JAG officer said. Your dues were used to fund fraud. All eyes on Patricia, who, for the first time, sat down and shut up. And me. I shut up on a video call, calm, overseas, just a guy wanting his land back. All I wanted was to come home to the land I paid for, I said. I never joined their HOA. They still took it. You could practically hear 60 mortgages grinding their teeth. When the case hit court, the whole town showed up. News vans lined the street. Patricia showed up in a blazer ironed by pure rage. The prosecution had binders stacked to the ceiling, the forged annexation blown up for everyone to see. I sat behind them, in uniform, boots shining. The judge, tough as nails, called order. The government laid it out. HOA president fakes an annexation, forges a deployed soldier's signature, sells his land, misuses the proceeds, violates federal law. Defense tried every excuse, clerical error, intent to help the community. The judge wasn't buying it. Are you seriously suggesting this signature, dated when Staff Sergeant Parker was in a war zone, is authentic? She asked. The notary, sweating bullets, admitted Patricia had told him it was urgent, that the soldier had signed, and he just stamped it. The flipper couple testified, too, pouring money into a home they technically didn't own, nearly in tears. We never would have bought it if we'd known. We didn't want to steal a soldier's home. We just wanted a project. The judge nodded. You're victims, too. Then it was my turn. I stood up, spine straight. Ma'am, I've spent 12 years in the Army. Missed funerals, birthdays. That's my job. But I didn't sign up for my land to be sold out from under me because it didn't match somebody's paint swatch. The courtroom was silent. Don't make me a hero. Just make sure no one does this to the next guy. The ruling? It was a legal nuclear strike. The annexation and lien were void, the sale rescinded, title returned to me. The HOA and its officers ordered to pay restitution and damages. Patricia and the treasurer, personally liable for fraud, with criminal sentencing at the high end. The judge went further. Given the HOA's insolvency and public interest, Coyote Vista Estates Homeowners Association is hereby ordered into receivership. Gasps all around. No more fines, no more violation letters, no more Patricia. But it didn't end there. 2 weeks later, the Department of Defense sent out letters. They were buying out Sun's Pain and the adjoining tracts for base expansion. Fair market value, not HOA fantasy prices. Some folks took the payout and moved on. Patricia? Not so lucky. She got 18 months in federal prison, $247,000 in fines and restitution. Your Honor, I was just trying to maintain community standards, she pleaded. The judge stared her down. Community standards don't include felonies. And for the first time since I'd known her, Patricia had nothing left to say. So here's my question. Since everybody's got an opinion, what would you have done if your home was stolen while you were off serving your country? Where's the line between community order and personal rights, and who gets to draw it? Drop your thoughts below, share your stories, and let's hear where you stand, because out here, sometimes justice has to come riding in with a Humvee and a clipboard.